So I got something a little bit different for you guys today. Over the weekend I went to the Villain Arts Tattoo Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. And while I was there, I happened to see this book, These Old Blue Arms, The Life and Work of Amund Dietzel. They had it for sale, which this is not an easy one to come by, so I definitely had to pick that up. And I've always been interested in the work of some of the pioneer tattoo artists in the United States and everywhere else, so this was a great find for me. And wasn't really sure what to paint for this week's video. I didn't have time to finish the flash sheet I was working on before, so I decided to do a reproduction of one of Amund's designs. And he's got a lot of really nice designs in here, but this eagle, let me see if I can get some of the glare off of it. This is the one we'll be doing this week. So what I did was I got this design off the internet and retraced it on my iPad to get the line work a little bit more smooth, and put it on my paper. Of course, I taped it down with my yellow tape. And if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, the tape I'm using right now is called frog tape. It's a delicate surface tape, so it's not likely to pull paint off of a wall or to pull the paper up when you take the tape off. So I like that a lot. It works great. So I like to have a 1-inch border going around. This tape is 1 inch wide, and we're going to start off with a wash. So I like to do the wash because it separates the border from the background, and any areas on it that would not be colored in will show through with the wash. So I just think it adds a little bit more character to the painting. Alrighty, so when I do my wash, I always like to grab a scrap piece of watercolor paper to test it on before I actually put it on my paper, because once it's on there, it's not so easy to remove. And I like to grab a few different colors. This is red oxide. And just put a very small amount of these. Now I usually just do a brown and a yellow, but I'm going to try some red in it this time. The red oxide is like a rust color, so I think that'll look pretty cool. This is raw sienna. And again, if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I use Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrous watercolors. See if I can get that focused. There we go. Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrous watercolor. I love that stuff. It works really well. Now I want my wash to be a bit light, so I'm going to add a little bit extra of the yellow so that it's not too dark, and we'll go ahead and mix that up. Now obviously if I was to put that on my paper right now, that would be way too dark of a wash, so we're going to water that down some. And just make sure that when you do water it down that you mix all of the paint in there. Alright, let's try that. That's definitely a bit lighter. And I think that'll work. Alright. So, I'm just going to take and wet my brush and start at the top corner here and just be kind of messy with it. And I've already got the paint that I mixed on the brush. I'm just thinning it down with more water. Good thing about watercolors, you can always layer it. And if you think you got too much in a spot, you can take a paper towel and you can lift it off. And there you go, that's a mostly dry wash. Now I got a cat hair on here, of course. I'm sure you've seen my cats in other videos, so it tends to happen a lot, but that's alright. Just take your brush and kind of scoop the hairs off of it. That's fine. I'm not going for perfection here. I'm going to get a little bit more water in some parts, and I'm going to drop some more concentrated paint. And just kind of let that soak. Move around. And I think that looks pretty good. So at this point, you can either take a break, let this sit for about, I don't know, 30 minutes, an hour, and dry up real good. Or you can do what I do when I'm in a hurry, is you can grab a hair dryer and dry it that way. So I'm going to grab my hair dryer. I'll be right back. Alright, I think that is dry enough. Now we're going to take the tape off. And since there's no parts of the drawing that is underneath the tape, you could leave the tape on for this part. I just find that if I can move my paper around while I'm painting, it makes it a bit easier. So, when you remove the tape, excuse me, you want to make sure that you're pulling at an angle like this, and you want to keep the tape, you don't want to pull up because you're more likely to pull paper with it. So you want to pull across like this. Doing it like that is going to make it a lot less likely to pull any of the paper off with it. And I mean, if you do pull some of the paper, it's not a big deal. But I don't want to rip the paper or anything, so I'm going to be as careful as I can. Now this tape right here, it comes off super easy. So again, I would recommend this tape. But if you're not using a tape like this that won't stick and rip it, then just make sure to pull it at an angle like that so that the paper doesn't come with it, or that you at least minimize it. Alright, so now we're ready to start the actual painting. Let me grab a fresh paper towel here. So when I'm doing a watercolor painting like this, I always like to do it from dark to light. So I start with my carbon black, which I need to find real quick. Alright, got my carbon black. my favorite two brushes to use, especially for this scale of painting, is a number 4 and a number 2. These are Winsor Newton University Series 233 brushes, so they're not huge brushes, but I like to use two because I'll use one for my solid black and then one that I dip in water to get a blend, to smooth out the blend. Alright. So we're going to start up here on the flag, and I'll grab just a little bit of black ink. A little bit of water. And let's see here, I need to get my reference. All right. So, to get a smooth black wash, make sure you've got a good amount of black on your brush. And you want to make sure that this line you're making right here stays wet, because once it dries up, it's going to be a lot harder to blend. Then you just grab some water. You want to go over the length of that line just to keep it wet. Notice how I'm not sticking in just one area, going back and forth just to make sure that that stays wet. As long as it's wet, you can keep pulling that pigment out. What you're trying to avoid here is having a line dry at one end, because once you've got that line, it's harder to blend out. So now you can start to see where the black is faded to the point where you can't really tell where it ends and where the background wash begins. Now let's say you want this part to blend a little bit further out. You don't like it because it's too quick of a change. Just go back into the darkest part of the black, get it wet, and start pulling it out. See, now we're pulling more of that to the other side. Let's say you probably noticed that I'm pulling the brush up towards my mouth, and this is kind of like spit shading. I don't just use my saliva. I use a cup of water because I don't think that my saliva is enough moisture to get this to blend out the way I want. So what I do is I dip it in my wash, or my rinse cup here. Just pat it on my tongue to get off any excess water, and then go back to painting. So I think that part looks pretty smooth. Now I'm going to go in a time lapse and paint the rest of it. Alright, now that we are done with the black, next step is to add the blue. I've got a few different blues here, so I'm going to get out my test paper and see which one is going to be the closest to what I need. Now, I'm thinking by looking at these, this cobalt blue is going to be pretty good, but we'll see. Yeah, that is going to work really well. It's cobalt blue. I like that a lot. Okay, so now we're ready for the blue. We got some cobalt blue that I have watered down. So I'm going to go with that. Now I'm going to start from the dark areas. Now this blue is going to behave the same way as that carbon black did, and that if you want to blend it out, all you got to do is get some water on your brush and start fading it out slowly, diluting the blue on the brush, and then you can go back into that blue with your water and just pull it out a little bit further. This is going to give you a smoother transition. So there we go, I think that's pretty good. Fade there. Not a whole lot of blue in this one, just going to paint the top part of the shield. And this part doesn't really fade, so I'm going to try to keep this more of a solid color. The only bit of fade that'll be on this part will be where the black fades to light in the middle, so when we layer that over you'll get the same effect without diluting the blue. There we go. Alright. Next we've got, let's see, there's a little bit of green in this. Now I actually already have some green on my palette. Some that's dry. You can see right there. That's what I'm going to use. I'm just going to take some water. I'm going to reactivate it. And I generally do not do this unless it is a color that's already diluted quite a bit in the painting. So these leaves, they're not solid green. They're just a really light shade of green. And I'm going to take again my thing there. That's even more green than it is in the other painting. So I might add a little bit of yellow. Or gamboge is the color that I'm adding to this green. We'll see how this looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Always good to have a scrap piece of paper, because once it's on there, it's on there. I mean, watercolor can be forgiving, you can remove it, but it's a whole lot easier just not to make the mistake in the first place. Yeah, that looks good. All right, that is all the green. So next we have red. And the reds, these Dr. Martin's Hydrus red watercolors can be a bit deceiving in the bottle. So you definitely want to test them out on a piece of paper first. And it's always good when you move to your lighter colors to either empty your rinse cup, because here's my main rinse cup, that's pretty dark, or have two rinse cups, two stages. So that one's a little yellow, it's not bad, I'm going to keep using it. Alright, so I've got two different reds here. Let's see if I can focus on these. This one is Crimson Lake, and just by looking at it, I mean, you might think that's a pretty good red. It looks pretty solid, doesn't it? And then Carmine. This is another good red. Very bright, bold, solid red. Now, this is why it's important to have a test sheet. And I'll get a little bit of these out. Here is the Crimson Lake. You see, as you pull it out, that is much more of a pink magenta type color. So while it looks nice and dark and solid in the bottle, it is definitely much lighter on the paper. So had I put that one on my painting, I would have been very disappointed. Now, since I've tested these all before, I know that Carmine is the way to go, especially for doing, like, getting a nice, bright, solid red. So you already got the Crimson Lake on there. This is Carmine. And I'll get a little bit of water so you can see how that pulls out. So you may not be able to tell a huge difference on this paper here, but the Carmine is just so much more solid, so much brighter. It's like a candy apple, I would say, as opposed to that magenta there. So that's definitely the one I'm going to go with. Now for reds, I like to go solid. I don't really like to dilute them much. So we're going to start up here with the stripes. Let's see, I've got too much paint on my brush too. Alright, here we go. Well, I can't believe I painted all that red with the video so terribly out of focus. Sorry about that. But now you can see what it looks like. Alright, and last thing we have to do is the yellow. Yep. Which I've already got a favorite yellow that I like to use. And it is Gamboge. This is a really nice golden yellow. Alright, now I'm actually going to focus this back on my painting. And before I assign it, I'm just going to go over it one more time with the blow dryer. Make sure everything's dry so I don't smear anything. And there we go. That is finished. One Amund Dietzel reproduction. Anytime I sign one of these that is not my original design, I do like to put who originally designed it. So original design by Amund Dietzel. I'll make sure I spell that right. And let's see, I'll just put my little mark right there. Alrighty, so on the left here I have pulled up on my iPad the original Amund Dietzel design, and then on the right is my repainting of it. As you can see, I did clean up some of the line work on it. The colors are not exactly the same, but I think they're pretty close. So I feel that I did it justice. Hope you like this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any friends that might like to watch it, please share the video with them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for a weekly update every Wednesday at noon. And please check out my Instagram at dqtattoos. I post all of my work there. And I guess that's it for this week. I hope you like this video. We'll see you next time.